Hello and welcome to my Woolly PhD. My name's Liz Scarf and this is a weekly vlog about what I'm currently thinking and making in my PhD all about wool. And this week I have been thinking about merino wool, merino sheep and colonisation, prompted by an Instagram post I saw by a British fibre enthusiast complaining about the domination of merino wool and encouraging people to explore and use all the different amazing British breed wools. Here, I think this is a great idea. I think it's crucial that fibre enthusiasts support the survival of as many sheep breeds as possible by using a range of fibres, right? By buying them, experimenting with them, understanding different qualities of different fibres, what they can do, what they're best at, what they don't. It's so great. Merino is just such a small window, or like one small thing in like a really great range of options, right? It did get me wondering though that perhaps this British person didn't know how responsible the British are for the current state of affairs re merino domination. And this Instagrammer certainly didn't mention it. I did, when I was in Iceland last trip, I think I did, maybe the one before, I did chat with a British shearer actually, and we were chatting about the research, and when I mentioned something about colonisation and sheep and wool in Australia, she was like, what do you mean? I was like, oh, well, you know, like it's all stolen land that they're growing sheep on, right? And I said a few other things about it, and she was like, oh, that really hits quite, and I was like, yeah. And it got me thinking, I mean, I know in Australia we're getting better at teaching the colonial history of this country. It made me wonder in Britain, like, how much British are taught about their own colonial history as colonisers across many places in the world. So, yeah, anyway, on to merino and colonisation. This is a tough topic, I want to say that, and I'll mention more about it later. But learning about the colonial history in Australia, it's quite tough. And the impact of colonisation as an ongoing process in contemporary times, it's also tough. Like, it's pretty brutal what happened, what continues to happen. Difficult to sort of sit with, to be with, to acknowledge, but actually really important to do that. So I thought, let's have one episode about this at least. I have touched on this before about how the British Empire had its colonies growing merino wool for wars, and this included, I didn't realise this was so many, right? Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Canada, Newfoundland, Falkland Islands, countries in East Africa, Uganda, India. So it was actually, there was a lot. Australia, New Zealand, Australia particularly, and South Africa became the sort of ones growing the most, I think, but it started off actually spread out across quite a few countries that had been colonised. Different kinds of colonisation though, settler colonisation, exploitative colonisation in these countries, but still, it's partly because merinos don't do so well in the wet soils of Britain. They get foot rot, and the landmass of Britain is just way too small to clothe the military for such a brutally ambitious empire, right? So before the colonies started growing so much merino, of course, Britain was highly dependent on imports of merino from Spain. I think the Spanish were the wool traders in these sort of 16, 17, early 1800s. Britain was very keen to become self-reliant from the Spanish. There's a whole history there, right? Because merinos are originally a Spanish breed, and the Spanish wouldn't actually allow anybody else to have their merinos. There was very serious penalties for anyone who tried to get a merino out of the country, because they were trying to maintain a monopoly right on this fine wool, which they did for quite a while, but they eventually started actually gifting merinos. In 1965, I think this started. They'd gift them to foreign powers. So Saxony, Germany, Austria, French, the Dutch, English in North America. There are also some stories of foreign countries who were not gifted merinos, but who tried to get hold of them by other means, whether this was sort of polite manipulations or outright theft. So they were highly sought after. And then as the Spanish allowed others to have them, the British were very enthusiastic about increasing the breed stock and production. So in Australia, this looked like sort of really some early sort of high-ranking colonists, right, were granted land and convict labour in order to establish these sheep farms, also cattle farms, but we're just talking about sheep here. And this land was and still is Aboriginal land. There were no treaties here. We say it was granted. This was stolen land. And this was land that was occupied by Aboriginal people. And the clearing of this land for farms also meant the removing, significantly, actually meant the removing of Aboriginal people, including their farms and their houses. So it's a colonial myth that Aboriginal Australians were simply nomadic hunter-gatherers. They weren't. They also settled in places. They built housing, townships, did a range of very innovative agricultural practices. And this removal, though, actually was frequently is code for massacres. So there was at least 419 massacres of Australian Aborigines and Aboriginal people in the period sort of 1788 to 1930. And we're talking tens of thousands of Indigenous people being sort of slaughtered in these massacres. And it's not the only way in which genocide is enacted in Australia too, right? Like breaking cultural continuity, not allowing people to speak their language, taking children from families, so stolen generation historically, but the ongoing out-of-home care crisis that we're experiencing now, where Aboriginal children are taken away from their families in higher numbers than the stolen generation. So this kind of dispossession and elimination, so there's a really it's not great. It makes a lot of things make sense. It's called The Logic of Elimination by historian Patrick Wolfe. It's a really important thing for Australians, I think, to learn about. Because when we're talking about clearing and dispossession of Aboriginal people from land, or also it is a form of genocide, and it's much more broad than just the killing of bodies. The elimination of indigeneity as a cultural identity is also part of how a settler colonial state takes over a landmass and the right to be there. Anyway, it's a difficult topic. Another part of this is the overgrazing of sheep. It's had a devastating impact on the land ecologies in Australia. It's like in the peak of wool production, like in the 1980s, there were 173 million sheep in the country. Today it's about 70 million, right? It's a lot of sheep. But even much earlier than the 1900s, right, the impact was already being felt. So grasslands were devoured, native animals that also like to eat grass were seen as competition. Of course, they had less to eat, but they were also hunted in huge numbers. Kangaroos are an example of that. But also dingoes and birds of prey were killed in large numbers. Australian colonisation is sort of responsible for the extinction of 34 mammal species. Right, this is the highest number of mammal extinctions anywhere. It's pretty intense. And Australia became the world leader in fine merino production because we didn't need to feed the sheep most of the time. And that is, they had access to such large areas of land that they could forage for all they needed most of the time. Obviously, there'd be certain seasons or conditions where supplementing would be required, but a lot of the time, the documentation on this just kind of says, oh, you could just leave them to do their own thing for most of the year, herd them up to shear them, and so the small amount of labour and kind of agricultural inputs that needed to be put in was a huge part of why Australia was so successful. And the reason why they didn't have to have huge inputs is because they stole huge amounts of land and dispossessed lots and lots of Aboriginal people to have access to that land, right? Absolutely decimated native flora. So this is another part of this sort of colonisation, merino sort of intersection. Another feature of this sort of merino colonial enterprise, right, is Indigenous labour. And there's a lot that's not known about this, it's my understanding, but there's a lot that I don't know about it, so I'm not going to speak to it very much. But I will say that, like, there was a range of labour practices, for sure, from the enslavement of Indigenous people, indentured and coercive labour, very underpaid labour, and also labour certainly paid at significantly lower rates to Indigenous workers than non-Indigenous workers. I think the research tends to point really that the pastoral industries, particularly in the north of Australia, were essentially dependent on unpaid Indigenous labour. So this is slavery, right, of adults and children. So our success in merino production really has, built on these foundations, or was enacted, right, or enabled by colonial dispossession and exploitation. Yeah. I feel like this is a really different topic for this channel in some ways, because it's also just, it is really difficult to talk about, to think about, to learn about, like the colonial history and the sort of contemporary reality in Australia. It's really quite devastating. The more you learn about it, the more you don't want to learn about it, because it's really, it's heartbreaking, right? And it's current, it's not just historical. And our beloved fibre arts are totally entangled in this, and not just in Australia, but globally too, right? Every colonised country will have their own stories about this, and the way in which those historical practices still play a part in sort of our contemporary realities as well. And I guess the uncomfortable feelings of this topic generally can kind of make us jump quickly to what can I do about it, which is great. But also, like, poorly thought through sort of help can also sometimes cause more problems. So sometimes there's a need to sit with it more, to make sure, to learn about it more, to have a better critical analysis of the issues and what actually helps or makes a difference, what doesn't. And I tend to think most of us, we actually have quite small lives and small spheres of influence. And so many of our actions, they are small, but it doesn't make them pointless, right? Because it's like that many small actions adds up. So, this Instagrammer's call to, buy and use non-merino wool, like he's choosing wool that isn't merino or merino crossbreed even. Is this a decolonising act? I don't know. Maybe. Probably. It's probably not the most powerful or impactful act of decolonisation we could do in our life, but it's something. It certainly supports breed diversity, and maintaining breed diversity is certainly critical, not only for the joy and utility of diverse fibre types, but also the diversity supports species survival. So I think it's always a good idea to buy from smaller producers, producers with, better land practices than big producers, and always good to support diversity. I guess a little side note, I really like pay the rent programs, where you donate part of your income to either a specific pay the rent scheme, and there's one in Victoria here in Australia, or if there's not a scheme in your area, you can start one, or you make some support, send part of your income directly to sort of Indigenous owned and Indigenous run organisations, and that they do with it what they want. There's no sort of strings attached. I think it's one little thing that people can do, even if it's your income's low and it's a small amount of money. Again, I think sometimes we don't do things because we think small actions don't make a difference. It's like small actions repeated multiple times makes a huge difference. Yeah. But I think even just getting more educated about colonisation and how our arts, craft practices are kind of implicated, how we benefit from that, what we might do that makes just a tiny little difference in replicating or stopping the sort of replicating of those patterns. You know, that's a thing that most of us can actually find a way to do. Okay, what have I been making? It's a little bit of a switching gears. The mood gets a bit, it's a tough mood. Anyway, I'm gonna switch gears anyway. Let's do it. Look at this. I've finally finished. I don't know how many months this has been going on. I should check that out. I finished and blocked and put buttons on this sort of Berkey fold Franken cardigan. I've got these little sleeve bits. You may notice they're actually different patterns of colour work there. I thought I would try one of each because I didn't love the first one. And I was like, oh, the second one, it's not that much, but I'm just going to leave them as slightly different. You know, I'll be in motion most of the time I'm wearing this. It won't be noticed. It doesn't matter. This is made with absolutely stunning 100% Icelandic sheep wool, spun at the Uppspunni mini mill. And this main colour, it's like a dark chocolate brown, almost black. Could be one of the blacks, actually. I don't think so. I think it's a super dark chocolate brown. This is a natural colour of the fleece, so some Icelandic farmers kind of work really hard to maintain colour diversity in the breeds there because there's a pressure to just breed white sheep to make it easier for the main commercial milling factory. Because they dye everything. They don't produce natural colours. Their natural colours are bleached back and dyed. Or I don't know if they bleach, but anyway, they'll over dye anything that's got colour in it as well. So anyway, not at Uppspunni. You get natural colours there that are absolutely natural colours. They're also 100% Icelandic wool. Again, where the Istex wool has got a blend of Spanish mohair and some Norwegian wools in it too. And the colours, the colour work colours, these are dyed. Some of them are white fleeces and some of them are grey fleeces maybe, or sometimes light brown. And that beautiful, lots of beautiful different shades. So that's dyed at the factory as well, or the little mill. I'm very happy with it. It's very far from perfect because I didn't have a pattern just to follow at every step. You know, I winged it, and so one of my button bands is probably, it's a little tight. I put the buttonholes way too far in. They should be further out. Did have some failures of logic when I was starting the button band, and I kind of had to correct on that. But anyway, I'm very happy with it. These buttons I got, they're really plain buttons, kind of just match the colour, not super shiny, not super matte. And I got them from the button shop in Melbourne. So if you're a Melbourne local or if you're ever visiting, it's so great to support this incredible store. They've got thousands of really great quality buttons to choose from. And you can go in and you can browse them yourself, or take your project, absolutely. Or you can take your project and say to the lady there who's a total button expert, and say, what do you think will go best with this? And if you're in luck and she's in the mood, she will just tell you, this button is the button for you. She didn't do that with this one. She did this with a previous cardigan that I had. And my daughter experienced this too for a quite a complex shirt she was making colour-wise. And honestly, this woman's taste to get the right button, so good. Anyway, the buttons aren't any kind of statement. They're just to really blend in, because this is statement enough for me. Yeah. I also have finished, I don't know if I ever showed these. Did I show you these already? Look at this. thing is with this, it doesn't look like much. It's all in the texture. You can barely tell you're holding it. So this is Icelandic goat cashmere, also spun at Uppspunni, and this little mitten pattern was written by the mill shop owner, the mill owner Hulda. You can get it on the website, I think. They are so sweet, but I had made the bind-offs too tight at the top and the thumb, so I had to just pull them back a bit. But they are a gorgeous little mitten. They're so soft. These are for my daughter. So yeah, I did that. It was a job I didn't want to do, but made myself do. That was good. And the other thing, I think I shared it about the sock surgery I was doing. I've just made some progress on this sock, which is a merino nylon blend, which if this is your first video ever watching on this channel, I'm never buying it again. But if you've been watching at least last week, you'll know that I've gone, merino nylon for socks is bonkers. There's so many breeds that you don't have to put nylon with to make really excellent socks with. I do love the dyeing on this. I think this is from, now I can't remember the name, from Canberra. Anyway, really, I love the colours on this. Really nice, sort of autumnal. Anyway, that's what I've been working on. Yeah, and I am heading back to Iceland at the end of this week. So I'll be there. I'm going to take a little bit of time to get there, but I'll be there in about a week and a half. And so this is going to be my travel project. I think I should be finished these by the time I get there. Yeah, and so in terms of videos, will there be a video? Because this one's a bit late, partly because I've been working on what to say about this topic for at least 3 days. Usually it doesn't take me that long to kind of write a video, but there's just so much and it's so intense, and it's like a topic that you don't want to not do justice, but it's also like the context of this channel that is pretty short videos. So anyway, it took me a while to kind of get it together, so it's a bit late. So will there be another one this week? I hope so, because there is something else I've been thinking about. But if I get a chance before I go, I'm going to get another video out this week. Probably won't get one out next week because I will just sort of be in transit, but we'll see. Yes, and then, oh yeah, this is wild. Friday week, I'm going to be heading up to the Highlands in Iceland for my second retír, like the big sheep roundup, which is very surreal and exciting. I'm really looking forward to that. So yeah, but there probably won't be a video that week, but there might be a video the following week. Hopefully I'm going to get reunited with my little cow Kusi, and yeah, it'll be so lovely to see all the sheep again. Yeah, so anyway, next week or the week after, new videos back in Iceland, just for a short amount of time, really just for Wool Week, which happens at towards the end of September. So hopefully a video from Wool Week at some point. And yeah, thanks for watching. Oh, long story short, maybe another one this week, maybe not, we'll see, maybe a few weeks. Thanks for watching. Bye.